In this video, I'll be doing a complete mock 2022 Bears offseason, going through the draft, cuts, free agency, re-signings, trades, everything the Bears could possibly do this offseason. I'll be covering in this video right here. So sit back, relax. It might get a little bit long, but I hope you guys enjoy this video. So getting right into it, guys, I'm not going to waste too much time, but pretty much how it's going to work is that I'll be going, like I mentioned, through every part of the offseason, free agency, draft, cuts, and telling you guys what I think Ryan Poles could possibly do during his first season as general manager for the Chicago Bears. Now, I'm going to base it off of what I think Poles will do, not necessarily what I would do myself. And obviously, we don't have a lot to judge it on because this is his first season ever as general manager in the NFL. So, you know, he's new to this, but based on what he said in his press conferences, I feel like I kind of know what he's going to be looking at this offseason, okay? In his press conferences, he talked about how he wants to build through the draft. So acquiring more draft picks, maybe trading back, maybe trading veteran players. Like, those are some things that I think he could do. He also talked about how he wanted more speed, more playmakers for Justin Fields. So he wants to upgrade the receiving core. He wants to upgrade the offensive line for sure. He talked about how bad the offensive line looked last season. So I kind of have a general idea of what he could be looking for, but we'll see, okay? It's impossible to predict everything a GM could do during his first season. But getting into this video, guys, pretty much what I'll be using to make this mock offseason is a Google Doc made by Quentin Crisco of OnTap Sportsnet. So big shout out to him, man. He made a fantastic Google Doc, which you can actually input, you know, what cuts you want to make, what players you want to draft, which players you want to re-sign, and it does all the salary cap work for you on that spreadsheet. It also has projected values on there, so it already has, you know, the projected contract value of all the free agents that you possibly would want to sign. So I've left a link down below to this Google Doc in my description, so if you want to play with this yourself, make your own mock offseason, you definitely can. Again, big shout out to this guy for making such a good document that I'll be using in this video. But let's start with this offseason, okay? We have around $41 million to spend at the beginning of free agency before we do anything, okay? Before we make any cuts, any trades, anything. And we have almost 30 free agents to either re-sign or let walk, which, spoiler alert, I'm going to be letting a lot of these guys walk. So I'll start first by talking about the players that I'll be cutting from this Bears roster. The first guy that will be cut is defensive tackle Eddie Goldman. Cutting him before June 1st will save around $6.6 million. Now, cutting him was obviously a difficult decision because he's been here for a long time. One of the most successful Ryan Pace second-round draft picks. He was a big part of the 2018 fearsome defense, but I just feel like he's not a scheme fit anymore in Eberflus's 4-3 scheme, okay? He's more of a space-eating nose tackle, which, you know, in a 4-3 scheme, is there a fit for that? I don't know, but more importantly, he hasn't been a great player the last 2 years. 2020, he took off due to COVID. In 2021, he was a shell of himself, so I don't think Eddie Goldman will be coming back. The next guy being cut is Jeremy Otuachu, edge player who Ryan Pace signed last year. Ryan Poles will have no loyalty to any player that Ryan Pace signed. So I just, especially with the scheme fit, I don't think it's there. And he also didn't contribute that much to us last year. So cutting him will save around $2 million. The next guy being cut is pretty controversial. Cody Whitehair, okay? Guard Cody Whitehair. I'm cutting him and putting a post June 1st designation on him, which will save the Bears almost $8.1 million. Now, Cody Whitehair has had some really good years, okay? He has been one of our best offensive linemen during the first couple years of his career, but as of late, the play has not been there, okay? Last year, he was a pretty bad guard. He was getting bullied at the line of scrimmage, and I just feel like that contract, what we're paying him right now, he's not worth that money as of now. I think that Poles will definitely look at this and think about cutting one of the longest tenured Bears on the roster right now. And then the next cut, the final cut, will be Danny Trevathan, linebacker. Cutting him and putting a post June 1st designation on him would save us about $3.5 million. And look, I love Danny Trevathan. He's been here for a while, but age is getting the best of him, okay? He's getting injured practically every single year, and that play, the level of play is just not there anymore. So I think the Bears are going to move on from Danny Trevathan. Next, I'll be going over the trades, okay? I have two players getting traded away from the Bears. The first guy is quarterback Nick Foles. I'm trading him to the Jacksonville Jaguars for pick number 188 in the draft this year. And that trade is going to save us about $8 million. Now, look, I know people will say there's no way we can trade Nick Foles. That contract is still $10 million. Okay, so some team is going to have to pick that up. But the Jaguars do have the cap space, and they also have Doug Peterson as head coach there. Okay, the guy that brought Nick Foles to the Super Bowl, and Trevor Lawrence needs a good backup. So I think it could potentially make sense. And the Bears getting a 6th-round pick back in that and saving money, it would be a great deal for both sides. So that's my first trade. My second trade, again, is going to be pretty controversial, but I think that Ryan Poles will consider it, is Robert Quinn to the Chargers for pick number 49 and pick number 81. Now, that will save us only $4.4 million this year, but the future savings will be even bigger. And obviously, the biggest part about this trade is the draft capital that we're getting back. Okay, a 2nd and 3rd rounder in a draft where the Bears don't have that many picks at all. That's going to be huge for Ryan Poles as he's trying to rebuild this roster. Now, look, I know that a lot of Bears fans will be opposed to this. Okay, Robert Quinn is coming off one of the best seasons of his career. Seeing him next to Khalil Mack healthy would be, that would be so fun to watch. But guys, you want to trade a player 1 year too early instead of 1 year too late. And I think that Ryan Poles will live by that philosophy. Okay, this Bears team badly needs more youth on it. It needs to, get money off of the books. We have way too much money right now spent on aging players. So I think this trade would make sense for both sides. Okay, the Chargers have a lot of cap space and they're trying to win now. They need a couple more pieces to go over the top. So I think they'll be okay with sacrificing, a 2nd and 3rd rounder. And the Bears badly need more cap space and more youth on this roster. So I think that's the trade. Those are the trades that Ryan Poles will make. But I also have Ryan Poles trading for a player from a different roster as well. And that player is wide receiver Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley has been linked to a lot of teams during this offseason. He's probably getting traded at some point because he's only, he only has 1 year left on his contract, only the 5th year option, which is about $11 million. And the trade value is not going to be that high because he doesn't reportedly want to play for the Atlanta Falcons anymore. The Atlanta Falcons are looking to trade him. So presumably what it's going to take is a 2nd-round pick. So in this trade, guys, I'm trading away the 2nd-round pick we got for Robert Quinn. I'm giving that pick to the Falcons for Calvin Ridley, which if Ryan Poles can actually get this done, guys, this would be a slam dunk home run type of move. The Bears badly need proven talent at receiver, and what better proven talent than Calvin Ridley, a guy that went off for almost 1,400 yards in 2020, just 2 years ago. Last year obviously was a down year. He also took a lot of weeks off due to mental health reasons, so we'd have to see if he's actually willing to play, if his mind is still in the game. But if it is, we would be getting one of the best receivers in football for only a 2nd-round pick. The reason why it's only a 2nd-round pick, again, is because he's only on a 1 year deal. His contract is $11 million, and he wants to be traded from the Falcons. So some team is going to get a steal. Hopefully that team is the Chicago Bears. Alright guys, so after all cuts, after all trades, we now have $62,421,071 to spend on free agency. A lot of money, but we have a lot of roster spots to fill. So let me begin by talking about which current Bears players I'm looking to re-sign on the squad for next year. The first guy that I'm re-signing is cornerback Artie Burns to a 1 year, $1,039,500 deal. Now, the only reason I'm re-signing him is for depth. Okay, he's not going to be a starter, obviously, but down the stretch last year, he actually had some pretty good games. So as depth, I feel like he could be a pretty good option. So that's the first guy I'm re-signing. The next guy is going to be long snapper Patrick Scales to a 1 year, $1,240,250 deal. He's been here for a while. He's been good for us, so why not re-sign him? Next guy, offensive guard Alex Bars to a 1 year, $892,500 deal. His projected contract value is pretty low, so why not bring him back as depth? Next guy, punter Pat O'Donnell, another 1 year deal for him, $1,837,500. It'd be nice to get an upgrade at punter, but he's been here for a long time. He's been pretty good for us, and I don't think we want to spend more draft capital on a punter or more money on a punter. So bringing Pat back sounds like that's probably what's going to happen. Next guy is going to be quarterback Andy Dalton, actually to a 2 year deal worth $1.6 million per year. Now I know that people say, why are you bringing Andy back? Well, he's been a backup for us already. Last year he was a backup for us, and I traded away Nick Foles, so I need some backup, and Andy probably is going to be pretty cheap on his next contract, and he's already proven he can be at least a somewhat capable backup. He's already worked with Fields, so why not bring Andy back? After that, we got safety DeAndre Houston Carson to a 1 year, $1.1 million deal for special team purposes and also for depth at safety. He's actually been a pretty solid backup safety for us. I'm also re-signing Deion Bush to a 1 year deal worth about $1.6 million because, again, like DHC. He's been a pretty solid backup safety. I don't think you're going to find other better options cheaper than them on the market. So both safeties, backup safeties coming back. I'm also re-signing Jesper Horsted to a 1-year deal worth $819,000. He had some fantastic moments last year, some chemistry already with Fields, so why not bring him back on a cheap deal? And the last guy I'm going to re-sign is wide receiver Jakeem Grant to a 1-year, $2.4 million deal. He was great for us down the stretch, a fantastic punt returner, actually made the Pro Bowl as well, so I think it makes total sense to bring him back for Ryan Poles. So those are all the Bears that I'm re-signing, but aside from that, I'm letting everybody else walk. 20 plus players I'm letting walk to a different team simply because we have limited cap space and we have a lot of spots to fill. And our team last year wasn't good enough. Okay, we only won 6 games, so a lot of these guys should not be coming back. Now, some notable guys that I let walk. The first guy is Allen Robinson. Obviously, first couple years of his Bears career were fantastic. He was one of the best receivers in the NFL, but last year was a bad year. And also, it seems like he doesn't want to be here anymore, guys. Like, he's been liking stuff on Twitter, kind of showing that he doesn't want to return to Chicago. The only reason why he played here last year was because of the franchise tag. So I don't think A-Rob is going to want to come back. I don't think we're re-signing Akeem Hicks either, guys. I would love to re-sign him, but he's getting older now, guys. He's getting, more injured now, and I think he deserves a shot on a title contending team for the last couple years of his career. Again, I love him. He's been the heart and soul of our team, but now I feel like it's time to move on, okay? We're having a youth movement now on the Bears, hopefully, and Akeem Hicks probably is not going to be a part of that. The next guy I'm also now re-signing, a notable guy, is Bilal Nichols. Okay, he's been here for the last 4 years. He had a couple good years, but I feel like he's not the best scheme fit in Eberflus's 4-3. And Ryan Poles has no loyalty to Bilal Nichols. He wasn't the one that drafted Bilal Nichols. I think he's gonna go for his own guy through the draft or in free agency. So don't think Bilal's coming back, and I also think that James Daniels is not coming back either. Now, this one is pretty controversial because I know that a lot of Bears fans want to see James Daniels re-signed, which if he does get re-signed, I'd be okay with that too, but I just feel like he's going to demand way too much money, okay? His projected contract value is over $55 million. That is a lot of money for a guard, especially one that I feel like doesn't have the same mentality that Ryan Poles wants in his offensive lineman. Yes, James Daniels is really good. Okay, he was really good last year. He does his job, but he's not the type of physical, menace that I feel like Poles wants on this offensive line. So I don't think he's going to get the bag from Ryan Poles. Okay, so after all the re-signings, we have $49,630,946 to spend on free agency, on guys from other teams. So let's begin. All right, so first let's work on this offensive line. I'm going to sign center Brian Allen from the Rams to a 3-year, $21.75 million contract with a first-year cap hit of $5.8 million. The Bears badly need an upgrade at center. Sam Mustipher was not cutting it the last 2 years, and Brian Allen is that upgrade up front for Justin Fields. Okay, playing in the Rams system the last few years of his career, he's been having some really good years, and he would also fit the scheme that I think that Luke Getsy wants to run. Okay, a zone blocker, has great hands, great mobility as well. I think he'd be a perfect fit for this Bears offensive line, and not too expensive either. Okay, 3 years, $21 million isn't that much money for a pretty decent center on the market. Let's continue working on the offensive line. I'm gonna sign offensive guard Alex Kappa to a 4-year, $37 million contract with the first-year cap hit of $5.18 million. Now, since I let James Daniels walk, since I cut Cody White here, obviously I'm gonna have to sign a guard, and I think Alex Kappa is the perfect fit for the Chicago Bears. Now, he's going to be way cheaper than James Daniels. I think he fits better on this offensive line in terms of what Ryan Poles is looking for than James Daniels does. He's more mean at the line of scrimmage, more of a physical, ferocious type of blocker up front. He wants to finish every single block, and I think that that's exactly what the Bears need on this O-line to protect Justin Fields. So there's some help on the O-line. Now I'm going to sign a defensive player, cornerback Charvarius Ward from the Chiefs, to a 3-year, $28.5 million contract with the first-year cap hit of $5.32 million. Ryan Poles is already really familiar with Charvarius Ward. He helped trade for him back in 2018 when he was on the Cowboys. He was signed as an undrafted free agent on the Cowboys, and the Chiefs traded for him that year, and he's been a pretty solid cornerback for them during his time with the Chiefs, obviously helping them win a Super Bowl in 2019. He was playing at a pretty decent level this year as well, and I think that especially in man coverage, he's going to be a solid fit in Eberflus's scheme on the opposite side of Jalen Johnson, and he's not going to be that expensive either, guys. I would love to have signed a guy like J.C. Jackson, but the Bears have too many positions to fill to go after a big ticket guy like that. So Charvarius Ward, I feel like that's going to be a decent, cheaper option. Staying on the defensive side, let me go for a safety to complement Eddie Jackson. I'm signing safety Jordan Whitehead from the Buccaneers to a 3-year, $18 million contract with the first-year cap hit of $3.36 million. I feel like Jordan Whitehead is the perfect complement to Eddie Jackson that we have been searching for ever since Adrian Amos left. Okay, he's a solid fundamental tackler. He can play in the box. Most of his snaps last year came in the box. Obviously good against the run. He still has reliable enough hands to pick passes off. Like he picked off Justin Fields actually last year in the game that we played against the Buccaneers. So he definitely would fit this defense really well, and maybe he could revive some of the magic that we saw back in 2018. Now going over to the offensive side of the football again, I'm signing wide receiver Christian Kirk from the Arizona Cardinals to a 3-year, $35 million contract with a first-year cap hit of $5.6 million. Ryan Poles badly needs to upgrade this receiving core, guys. I already traded for Calvin Ridley. I'm also signing a guy in Christian Kirk to a pretty modest deal, about $10 million per year. The first-year cap hit is pretty low. Just because Justin Fields needs more weapons on this team, and Christian Kirk is one of the more underrated options in this league. Okay, playing in that Arizona offense with Kyler Murray. He was a great receiver last year. He was mainly playing out of the slot, and he had almost 1,000 receiving yards and a bunch of big plays. He was a big play machine last year in that offense, and that's exactly what the Chicago Bears need on their offense. Okay, a guy that can take passes all the way to the house, 30, 40, 50 plus yards, and that's exactly what fits Justin Fields' skill set as well, with his ability to pass the deep ball. So I think that Christian Kirk would be a really nice fit on this Bears offense. Next, I'm going to sign one of Flus's guys from Indianapolis, Al-Qadin Muhammad, edge player from the Colts, to a 1-year, $3.06 million contract. Okay, the Bears need more pass rushers since I traded away Robert Quinn, and Muhammad could be one of those guys. Okay, he already has success, playing in Eberflus' system. He already knows Eberflus well, so why not reunite Flus with one of his more underrated talents from India. I mean, he had 7 sacks last year, a bunch of pressures. As a depth guy, he could be a fantastic option on the Chicago Bears defense. Going over to another guy from Indianapolis from Eberflus' defense, I'm also signing linebacker Anthony Walker to a 1-year, $2.1 million deal. The Bears need more linebackers since Danny Trevathan was cut, and, they're not re-signing many of the other guys like Joel Iyiegbuniwe and all the other backups that we had. They're pretty much not coming back besides for Roquan, so we need more linebackers, and Anthony Walker could be that guy. He's already had success in the system, and it makes sense to just stick with what you know, and, Eberflus knows this guy pretty well. Going over to another linebacker I'm also signing linebacker Josh Bynes from the Baltimore Ravens to a 1-year, $3.7 million contract. Again, the Bears need more linebackers because Flus's 4-3 scheme requires in the base package at least 3 linebackers in the middle of the field, and right now we don't have many at all, and he is a more underrated linebacker in this league, guys. He is getting a little bit older. He's been in this league for almost 10 years, so yes, age is a concern, but he stayed pretty healthy. Okay, he played over 530 snaps last year. He played 760 snaps the year before, so he's not really getting hurt that much, and he's still playing at a pretty decent level. Okay, PFF actually had him graded as an above average linebacker. Okay, a 74.8 grade, and especially on a 1-year deal, that could be a steal for the Chicago Bears. Next guy I'm signing is defensive lineman Maurice Hurst to a 1-year, $1.1 million contract. This is mainly because he already has familiarity with their defensive line coach Travis Smith. He already coached him with the Raiders, and he had some pretty good years under coach Travis Smith. So maybe this is just one of those cases where Travis Smith vouches for this player and we get him, okay, on a pretty cheap contract. He actually had a pretty decent year last year, especially in terms of run defense with the 49ers in the snaps that he got. So another pretty cheap depth signing. I'm also signing offensive tackle Cornelius Lucas to a 1-year, $2.09 million deal to be a swing tackle for the Chicago Bears. Since I'm keeping Tevin Jenkins at left tackle and Larry Borom at right tackle, you need some veteran presence to back them up in case things go wrong. And Cornelius Lucas could be that guy. He already played on the Bears in 2019, and we should not have let him go. Okay, he's been playing pretty good for the Washington football team, or the Commanders, or whatever they're called now. He's been a pretty good option for them, and as a backup, as a swing tackle, he could be a nice piece for the Chicago Bears. The next signing, also on the offensive line, I'm signing Matt Pryor, offensive guard, to a 1-year, $680,000 contract. This is nothing but depth, guys. I need some more depth on the offensive line, so he's pretty much just a depth signing. And then the last guy that I'm signing is wide receiver Equanimeous St. Brown to a 1-year, $1 million deal. This is mainly because of special teams. I need somebody that can play on special teams, and Equanimeous St. Brown is one of those guys, but he's also played in Luke Getsy's scheme, in the Matt LaFleur scheme with the Green Bay Packers. It didn't really work out that well, but why not give him a 1-year prove-it deal to see if he can make it happen in Chicago, okay, with more opportunities, maybe in training camp and preseason. We'll see what he has, and it's going to be risk-free for us anyways, okay, only signing him to a 1-year contract. Alright, so those are all my free agent signings. As you can see, I didn't really go after any big ticket guys like, JC Jackson, like Chris Godwin, because that's what Ryan Poles said in his press conference, right? Like, he said that he wants to go after the somewhat cheaper guys, like the second wave of free agency guys, which makes sense for a guy that's trying to build a roster for the first time. You don't want to invest too much money into one guy, like, I don't know, like a Devontae Adams, spend all of your money just on one guy. We have a lot of spots to fill, so it makes sense to kind of budget that equally in a bunch of different spots. So that was pretty much my philosophy for these signings, but let's get to the draft now, guys. Okay, so now we have the NFL draft. I'll be going through all my picks, and let's begin. Alright, so on the screen right now, I'll put a list of all the picks that we have in the draft this year. Remember, I got an extra second and third rounder in the Robert Quinn trade, but I traded away that second rounder for Calvin Ridley, so we only have an extra third rounder, and we also have an extra sixth rounder from the Nick Foles trade. But otherwise, these are our picks, and let's begin. Okay, so with pick number 39 in the second round, the Chicago Bears select Zion Johnson, guard out of Boston College. Zion would be a perfect replacement for James Daniels on this offensive line. Okay, he's very physical. He's a demon, okay, a physical freak of nature. He's 6'3", 316 pounds, so he can physically overwhelm people at the line of scrimmage. And he's also that type of physical menace that Ryan Poles wants in his offensive lineman. Okay, he finishes blocks. He gets dirty. He pushes people to the ground, and he has the mentality that this offensive line needs more of. Okay, he also would fit on a zone blocking scheme, which is what Luke Getsy probably is going to run here in Chicago. So I think he'll be the perfect fit with the Chicago Bears. With pick number 71, then the Chicago Bears will select Marcus Jones, cornerback out of Houston. Now, Marcus Jones, yes, he is pretty small. He's only 5'8", 185, but he plays well beyond his size, guys. Like, he's a fantastic athlete, but also a great hitter. He hits people pretty hard, and we don't have a lot of players like that on the team right now, and it's something that Eberflus stresses he wants on this defense. Guys that are going to hit hard, that are going to physically impose their will on the other side. And I think that Marcus Jones would be a perfect fit, for Eberflus in this defense, especially out of nickel. Maybe he could play nickel corner for us, okay, while we have Charvarius Ward and Jalen Johnson on the outside. It never hurts to get too many good corners, okay? I know a lot of people are high on Thomas Graham Jr. as well, which, yes, maybe Thomas Graham Jr. could start on this defense too, potentially, if he has a good camp, but you can never go wrong adding more talented cornerback guys. Like, that's how important this position has become. You need great ones all over the roster, and the Chicago Bears right now lack that depth, so we need more cornerbacks like Marcus Jones. He also brings value as a return man too, okay? He was actually second in the nation last year in punt return yards, also bringing a few to the house, so he would bring added value as a special teamer to the Chicago Bears as well. With pick number 81, then the Chicago Bears will select Max Mitchell, offensive tackle out of Louisiana. Now, I know what people will say. Oh, we already have, Tevin Jenkins, Larry Borum on the roster right now. Am I giving up on those guys? No, I am not. But you need to draft offensive linemen if you want to have a great offensive line. We've seen it time and time again in the NFL, guys. Like, so many offensive linemen get injured throughout the course of a season, and you need multiple great ones. You need good depth, and the Bears have never had good depth. Teams like the Packers do, teams like the Patriots do, which is why they keep on winning. So Max Mitchell, he's played both left tackle and right tackle, so he could be a swing tackle for us, just filling in whenever he has to. And honestly, he could be a starter down the road if Larry Borum or Tevin Jenkins don't work out. He's really physical at the line of scrimmage. He fits that mold that Ryan Poles wants in his offensive lineman. Finishing blocks, nasty at the line of scrimmage, great in pass protection, but also a solid run blocker as well. I think he would be a perfect fit in this scheme. With pick number 146, the Chicago Bears will select Brian Asamoah, linebacker out of Oklahoma. He's a freakish athlete, has fantastic range, and in today's NFL, you need your linebackers to be like Brian Asamoah, okay? Great athletes, guys that can play zone, and in Eberflus' system, in the 4-3, you're going to need multiple linebackers that can cover, that can go sideline to sideline, and right now we only have one of them, Roquan Smith, so I feel like Brian Asamoah would be a perfect complement to Roquan Smith. With pick number 148, the Chicago Bears will select Calvin Austin III, wide receiver out of Memphis. If he actually falls to the 5th round, which it feels like he's falling to the 5th round in most mock drafts, I think this could be a potential steal for the Chicago Bears. Yes, he is really small, okay, 5'8", 173, but maybe he could be that Tyreek Hill type of player that the Bears have been looking for on this offense. Okay, an explosive athlete, can go 0 to 100 really fast, great in space, and Ryan Poles has already drafted guys like that in the past with the Chiefs, so why not do that here in Chicago as well? With pick number 184, the Chicago Bears select Carson Wells, edge rusher out of Colorado. Now again, since I traded away Robert Quinn, I would need to acquire more edge rushers, more pass rushers, and Carson Wells could be a steal out here in the 6th round. He actually had 2.57 tackles for loss per game, which was among the top, in the nation. So he's been pretty underrated. He had a good season last year. He would be kind of more of a, a backup player on the Bears because we would already have, Khalil Mack, Travis Gibson starting. So he would be a developmental guy. Hopefully he would turn into something more. But in the 6th round, I feel like he would be a pretty solid pick. And then finally with pick number 188, the Chicago Bears select Jelani Woods, tight end out of Virginia. Since Jimmy Graham is walking in this mock draft, I mean, he's super old. Obviously, we're not going to re-sign Jimmy Graham. I'm planning to go with youth here in the draft at tight end and maybe give Cole Kmet a challenge for his starting spot too. I don't think he's going to give up that starting spot to Jelani Woods because Jelani Woods needs a lot more refining. He's still a little bit raw overall, but he's a damn good athlete, guys. Like, he has good size, good length. Being 6'7", 265, he could be a perfect red zone target for Justin Fields. So getting him in the 6th round will be a pretty solid pick in my opinion. All right, so there you have it. That is the entire mock offseason for the Chicago Bears. We have around $5 million in cap left to use on in-season signings after signing our draft class, but let me put a picture of the roster on the screen right now, and let me know what you guys think about this roster, okay? I think it's a pretty solid roster if I go over this. So obviously quarterback position pretty much stayed the same. The receivers I upgraded heavily, okay, with Calvin Ridley, with Christian Kirk, proven options. I also got a guy like Calvin Austin in the draft who could turn into something, hopefully, down the road. If you look at the offensive line, I upgraded a lot on the interior with guys like, Brian Allen. Alex Kappa also drafted Zion Johnson as well. If you look at the tackle position, then I got some good backups in Max Mitchell and Cornelius Lucas. So if, Tevin Jenkins, if Larry Borum don't work out, I got some options behind them. If you look at the defense, then, it's improved all over that secondary, okay? Getting proven guys in, Jordan Whitehead and Charvarius Ward. I also picked up some linebackers to help the middle of that defense in Eberflus's 4-3 scheme. I got some drafted guys too in Marcus Jones, Brian Asamoah, Carson Wells. So top to bottom, I feel like this is a much improved roster from last year. What would you guys do differently though? Let me know down below in the comments. Which players would you go after? Which players would you want to draft? Let me know down below. Let me know what you guys think about this mock offseason. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video if you made it to the end. I cannot wait for the real offseason to start. There's a bunch of different possibilities of what could possibly happen, but hopefully it goes something like this. Let me know your thoughts down below, guys. But as always, bear down.